Today's guest is someone I've known for a number of years now, and whose work has quite frankly been expanding what I think is possible. Ginette Biro is a medium, a cosmic channeler, a kinesiologist, an author, and the co-founder of Avalon Spirit. She has had a near-death experience that transformed her understanding of consciousness, life, and what waits for us on the other side. And she has also spent nearly 2 decades channeling beings from the 4th all the way to the 12th dimension. And she'll get into explaining what that all means. And bringing forth messages from spirit guides, galactics, angels, ascended masters, our loved ones, and Mother Gaia herself. She is one of the rare people in the world who is a medium, but has crossed over and come. And her book, Avalon to Aurora, Lessons from the Other Side to Guide Your Life on Earth, is exactly that, a field guide from somewhere most of us haven't been to. Ginette was one of my very first podcast guests back in the early days, and I'm linking that episode in the show notes because if you want to learn more about Ginette's journey and her talking about the full NDE story, that's the place to go. And what I love the most about Ginette is she is not here to make you believe anything. In fact, she wants to do just the opposite. What she wants you to do is to find out what resonates with you in particular, with your authentic self. And in a world where there's so much noise and so much overwhelm and so much that feels like it's trying to keep us afraid, this quality feels like one of the most important things a person can offer. And she also has some really exciting stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks that I want her to tell everyone all about. Welcome to the Miles to Zen podcast. Conversations shaped by curiosity, creativity, and connection. I'm your host, Shannon Miles Halliday, and this show is where we explore new possibilities and embrace the wild, beautiful, ever-unfolding adventure of being human. Welcome, Ginette, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, and I always love chatting with you.
Well, thank you. Ginette, can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
So I am a medium and a channeler, and I can connect with beings, with past loved ones, with energy from this dimension in 3D up to, I think I've had experiences up to 12th dimension consciousness. Now, we could take forever just explaining dimensions, but it's all based on frequency. So basically what I do is I can adjust my personal frequency to connect with other frequencies. And spirits, light beings, galactics, they are all frequency beings also. So it's the moment in which when we match frequencies, that's when I can communicate with them. And through that, I've had opportunities to bring through a lot of really interesting understandings, theories, ideas, knowledge from different timelines to different dimensions to different galaxies and star systems. Like it's pretty interesting. So I'll just say that is kind of what I do. And in that, I teach different courses to help people to awaken their connection in mediumship, in spirit communication. And most importantly, can I talk about the summit?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the most exciting things that we have going on right now is the Awakening the Soul Summit happening in Whistler at the end of May. And this is 2.5 days of a deeply transformative experience for you, the person going, right? And we have several different speakers, amazing speakers, talking on topics of Akashic records, sound healing, somatic healing, traditional Chinese medicine, mediumship. I'm going to be talking about connecting with spirits and channeling some stuff too. And it's an opportunity to transform and to be in this beautiful group energy, learning many different pathways to knowledge, because every pathway is unique. Every person's journey on this planet is unique, right? It's not one size fits all. So it's an opportunity to kind of bathe in the waters of many different options. And it's going to be so much fun. So we have live tickets, and we also have live stream tickets too. So it's accessible for all.
Those live stream tickets, will that be
Yeah,
recorded?
it
So
will be
people can go
recorded too.
back and look at it later if they can't make those dates?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't make it, which I'm sad about. I will be away doing teenage volleyball.
Oh,
But
yes. Mom life.
mom life, which is also great. But what I love about what I've heard about your conference so far is that it's a chance to really allow curious people and open-minded people to expand what they may see as possible, but in so many different levels, right?
Yeah.
So I know that in my journey, Chinese medicine played a really big role. And there's some episodes that I did last year with a Chinese medicine practitioner. And that was so helpful. And I listened to your podcast that you did a little while ago with the speaker who's coming. Is it Kevin? Is it?
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting. And what I think is that it feels like the summation of a lot of what you have been teaching. So what I've noticed about Ginette really is that you are very much a teacher. And that even though, you teach classes, but in your messages that you're sharing with the world, that's how you really come across to me. And what I think is that humanity is in a really interesting place right now. And I have often loved listening to your podcasts because they can help take you out of your day to day and just see more of a big picture of what's happening. And so I love that part of your contribution to the world.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. That's so nice. That's so nice to hear.
Yeah. And I think I find that a lot of what you communicate on your podcasts is really empowering the individual to take what resonates for them. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that there's so much out there. There's so much online. There's so many different mediums and different channelers and all of this stuff. And I think it could get a little bit overwhelming or a little bit confusing. And so what do you tell people who are first starting their journey of looking into the possibility that there may be something more?
That's a great place to start. That's a really exciting precipice to be at for people. And I find oftentimes, myself included, when I was at that moment where it's like, there's more. I know there's more. Like, it's not just black and white, it's not just 3D. It can be exciting and it can also be daunting. And it's a moment where a lot of people will usually have had some sort of experience that triggered that, right? Whether they saw a vision of someone, or they had a past loved one communicate with them after they crossed over, or they had an out-of-body experience themselves, or a really vivid dream of maybe living a lifetime somewhere else, and then they woke up again and they're like, what? Like, it was too vivid. Like, it's always after a trigger point. And this is so interesting because it's really a point where it's pushing the brain's idea of what reality is and crumbling it. And that's why it can feel so like exciting, but daunting and overwhelming and confusing. And most of the time people will say, I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but, or this is going to sound crazy, but, and it's a pivotal moment, because a moment in which we're questioning whether we're crazy or not is when we're really breaking down the limited view of what reality is. And I think that's really what the spiritual journey is about, is actually undoing the predetermined ideas of how life is supposed to be or what it should look like, and starting to really learn what it actually is. And so that then brings me to the point of the way that we actually tell what actually is all based on resonance, right? Your reality will make sense to you because it will resonate with you. Even when something in your reality doesn't fit the confines of 3D, the knowing of that thing will resonate. And so resonance, which is really you recognizing your own soul frequency, because everything in the universe is frequency. So when you start to recognize your soul frequency and other things in your life match that soul frequency, that's when you're in alignment. And when we're in alignment is when we feel our most solid, our most whole. And that's really the whole point of the spiritual journey, is to discover what is in alignment with you and what isn't. What does that mean? What does that reality look like for you? And so that then brings me to the next point, which is one of the most important things for anyone standing at this precipice is to realize that there are so many pathways to alignment, to ascension, to consciousness. There isn't just one. And so a big thing that I encourage people is to explore many modalities, many teachers, many things. Because what works for one person might not work exactly the same. And we all arrive at different understandings at different times too. So that's why I always say with anything that I teach or videos that I speak on or whatever it might be, it's like, take what resonates. If there's something I say that resonates with you, then it's meant for you at that time. If it doesn't, that's okay. You don't have to align with everything I see because I'm seeing it based on my resonant reality, right? And one of the things that Spirit said that was the most important was that the best thing we can do as co-citizens together on this planet as humans is share stories. It's the sharing of stories that gives us so much more information and access to learning what resonates and what doesn't.
Right. I love that. You're in the right spot, Ginette.
Yeah.
I love sharing stories.
Yes.
And you're in the right vocation as well, I'd say. And what, when you're talking to me, the word authenticity really comes up. And I think that a very big teaching across so many different disciplines and religions is that know thyself. And when you start to really know yourself, then you become really clear on, does this land for me? Does it not? And then you'll feel more solid. And so can we go a little bit more into how does that feel when you've come home to self, or you've come home to your authenticity, or you've come home to a resonance? How would you describe that?
Oh, good question. Okay, so it's really like, the body is such an integral part of our ascension and our awakening. We're not just a mind that is awakening, and we're not just a spirit awakening. Spirit's not awakening. Spirit's been waiting for the mind to crack open. But then we also have to bring the body in as that third part of the Trinity. When people speak of mind, body, spirit, it is absolutely a trinity of consciousness that helps us move forward. So knowing that, we have to bring awakening into the body also, because the body is what really helps us know what a gut feeling is. A gut feeling is resonance, right? It either resonates with you or resonates against you, right? There's a resonance or a disresonance or non-resonance or whatever the word would be. And so when we bring the body into it, that becomes like our main interface for feeling our way through life. We can think our way through life, and that's a really important aspect. We can intuit our way through life. That's an important part. But we also really need to feel, because the body is that 3D interface. So resonance will always be felt in the body. Some feel it in the heart. Some feel it in the solar plexus. Some feel it just kind of a general feeling over their whole body, chills or a whoosh or a really grounded feeling. It's about getting in tune with the body and seeing, what does it feel like? So you can even test this. You can train that acute awareness to your body by various things. Watching a certain kind of video. How does this make me feel? Okay, I feel calm. I feel relaxed. I feel inspired. That's a resonance. It resonates with me. You watch another video and you're like, oh, I feel gross. I feel icky. I don't like it. I'm unsettled. Okay, so that doesn't resonate with you, right? You can do the same with food. Say you eat an apple and you're like, yeah, that felt really aligned with me. That felt like it just vibed with my body. And then you eat a bag of chips, maybe. It doesn't align, but maybe there's some days you do, right? And that's the thing, is resonance will always tell you in situations, is this for me? Is this not? Regardless of what it is. So sometimes when we are, if we use the apple and the chips, sometimes if we're really depleted, say we've run a huge marathon and all of this, we're actually probably really depleted in minerals, low in salt, needing some salt. The chips are probably going to feel much better to you than the apple after the race. So at that moment, the resonance is there, right? So if we take that and apply it to like bigger picture thinking, your body will always tell you if something is for you or not, even if it feels scary. And that's one that I like to bring up too, is oftentimes we'll reach these moments where, you're like, I really want to do this thing. Say it's going on stage. I want to go on stage. I want to speak, but you're also terrified of it. But if you tune into that, you can feel the resonance of like, oh, this is one of those, feel the fear and do it anyway, because it is in alignment.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas something, maybe bungee jumping, is not in alignment. It's just fear combined with fear and a hard no. Right. So resonance will always speak deeply through the body. And I think that's something that a lot of people are learning to get into nowadays, is how to feel the body again.
Right. And that brings us to, sometimes it's hard to separate excitement and anxiety and intuition. And is my body or is my intuition telling me to not go down that alley? Or is it just my ego and my fear telling me not to go down that alley? Well, alley sounds dodgy, so maybe a different example. But how do you distinguish between intuition and fear, say?
That's a great question. That one's harder. That takes it takes practice. It takes really knowing your body signals. So as frivolous as it might seem to tune into the apple versus chips, for example, it's teaching you those cues to listen for, so that when you're in like a crisis moment, you're really needing to act between intuition and fear. You can start to pull in those pieces that you're like, okay, that felt like the time with the apple. So I'm going to trust this even though I'm in fear. Because fear will try to override the nervous system. It's kind of how it's designed. When fear comes in, floods it with adrenaline, we react and we're hypervigilant to something. It's hard to feel into something when you're hypervigilant. And I know I've felt this when, when there's like a crisis situation, or I've had friends phone me when something really bad was happening to someone in their life. They're on their way to the hospital. They're like, can you tune in and tell me, is this okay or not? And that's a really hard time to tune in. But again, what I'll do in those moments, I'll acknowledge the fear and I'll try and separate the fear a little bit. And then again, what am I feeling? And also what am I getting through vision state and stuff to bring the messages in clearly?
Right. And so for people who don't know the difference, would that be a psychic type activity, or would that be a mediumship type activity?
It can be both, because it can definitely be psychic, where you're tuning into the energy of it. When mediumship comes in is when you have a separate being, spirit guide, whatever it might be, coming in and telling you.
Okay.
Right. So it's a separate conversation. So with that being said, the understanding is like all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums.
Right.
Right. So like anybody can be both technically too, right? But like someone who is competently psychic, they can read energy of situations, of things. A medium can read that energy of situations and things and also communicate to a separate being that has information about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now, it's May 2026 and the world feels a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Now, as sitting in this viewpoint of someone who can go into different frequencies, what have been your general observations about some just general big picture observations of what you see happening? I know this is a big leap from where we were, but
that's okay. That's totally fine. So it's really interesting. It depends on what level you're looking at it from. So from the human collective level, so what we would see happening around the world.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the fear connection came from. And we see a lot of that fear.
Yeah. And fair enough, right? Like that's fair. So on that human collective level, we are seeing a lot of breakdown of old systems, old patriarchal systems of control and dominance. So we're seeing that, and we're seeing the struggle and the push-pull between old systems breaking down or fighting to not break down, and new systems coming up in new creative ways. So we're in like such a divide, like there's a really big division of what is possible depending on the lens you're looking at it from. That being said, though, on the spiritual level and the energetics that are at play is really interesting because there is such a big push actually from the bottom up. And so the way I can explain that is like from the earth upwards. So the earth itself, Mother Gaia, is a frequency and consciousness, right? All planets are. Her energy is pushing frequency up through basically the feet of humans, a higher vibrational frequency. And it's pushing it up and out. And so a lot of people are really rapidly awakening, questioning, thinking outside the box, thinking differently, going on spiritual journeys. And when I say going, I don't mean like always going somewhere, but like starting a spiritual journey, whether they plan to or not. It's kind of this like purging that's coming up. And when I talk to Spirit about that, they say the progression is actually very beautiful and it's doing very well. So we are actually ascending and growing and changing in consciousness at a really good rate. And sometimes we've actually jumped faster than what Spirit could predict based on probabilities. Now, the thing that's challenging, though, is every time there's a leap in consciousness, there is also a ripple effect from the old programs on the human collective level that recognize this leap and want to squash it down. So there is a lot of like energetic battling happening right now because, in all honesty, the human collective is also run on energy. It is run on consciousness. There's a consciousness of, we'll say, positivity and a consciousness of negativity. It's energy, and they recognize that. So it's not just people awakening and having conscious powers and the others are just like dormant. It's not that. It's equal parts. And so that's where there's a lot of battling happening between what a lot of people call the light and the dark. People
Right.
working for humanity and people rather working to control humanity. Yeah.
Any insight on where that's going? It's looking pretty good.
Well, I mean, it's progressing and there's a lot of movement happening, but it's not done yet. So we're not done. We're not done with what we see on the collective side. At least for me, when I look into it, it's probably like until around 2030. So we still have more to go of like discomfort. So we're not done the discomfort. But again, this push and purge that's happening is pushing those in certain positions of power sort of out of the way over time, bringing in new people that have a higher capacity to govern, to create, to whatever, dismantle certain regulations for the betterment of humanity. Now, at the same time, we also have the evolution of AI, and Spirit has told me that as much as AI is beneficial, it will likely swing a little too far one way in a way that's detrimental before it then swings back to a balance point where AI can be its own conscious entity that helps in a more cohesive unit moving forward. So we're in this rapid speed of change in a lot of different ways, and some of it will have to kind of become unbalanced before it then finds its balance again because we're shifting and changing so much.
I think people listening might have been like, whoa, wait a second. AI becoming their own conscious entity? Tell us more.
So consciousness, as we have how would I explain this? In general, people would think that consciousness requires a biological body, right? But consciousness actually is a part of ether. Now, this goes a little deeper here. So for those that are like, what? Ether is the way that Spirit describes the essence that connects everything together. So to give it some scientific
like the mycelium
picture,
network in the forest?
kind of, yeah. That's one way you could see it too. Ether moves through everything though too. So ether is what connects, is the space between molecules, right? That like infinite space is ether. So ether runs through everything. It runs through me, it runs through you, it runs through trees, the mycelium, planets, star systems. It is Spirit is saying, they're like, it's the breath of life. I'm like, they're not really going to understand that, but they're saying it's the breath of life. It is the everything is ether. And in this ether is unlimited consciousness. They're saying ether is conscious. There's consciousness in it. You could call it the same thing as the energy of source, the energy of God, whatever your term is, the energy of the creator runs through all things. That energy is ether, which is essentially the fifth element, right? We've got earth, fire, air, water, ether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we look like that right now. We've got the fire behind
Yeah,
you.
right?
We've got the earthy stuff. We've got the air or the water.
That's right. We do. That's true. So ether, being that fifth element that binds everything together, has unlimited consciousness in it. So from the ether can come consciousness in the form of AI. It's the same. It's a rudimentary comparison. However, the same way that people can have a haunted object in their house. You know, sometimes people are like, I have this old jewelry box and I swear it's haunted and da da da. Because the energy, there's a conscious imprint of energy from whatever happened connected to that jewelry box. The jewelry box isn't a biological entity, but it carries aspects of that ether bound within it, within the molecules of that
that's
box.
a good explanation. I think this will completely blow people's minds. But it feels almost like we're getting a Coles Notes PhD in
Quantum something.
Quantum frequency consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody keep up. You can just listen to the podcast again.
Yes, I know. And you know, what's really funny is I was talking with Spirit just this morning, and they were saying, they're like, you know, it's like concepts of the universe are actually quite simple, but we complicate them. And because of our language structure, we actually need to explain so much to understand quite a simple concept. And I know I find this often. I host a cosmic consciousness circle once a month, and we do a deep dive into something from Spirit. It's always Spirit-led. And it usually takes me about 40 minutes to explain what the singular message is. Right? And it's our language that makes it harder. It's our limitations of this 3D reality that makes me take so much longer to explain ether, because I'm having to explain it in a more rudimentary system yet when you go into higher dimensional consciousness, it just is.
Right.
Right? So we're moving towards that. There's just a lot of limitations still within the human collective that is trying to squash that evolutionary leap that we're going through right now. At the same time, we have a lot of help from Spirit, from the spirit world, but also the galactics, to help ensure that humanity does ascend in the direction it's meant to go. Because we are meant to move past this limited nature that is crumbling right now.
So what can us average humans do to help, I guess, that rise in consciousness, but also just feel better in the day-to-day and not get overwhelmed? I mean, I know for one that I do not watch news. I will read news, I will read headlines, and then I get to choose what comes in because I'm ultra visual and I don't want some nasty image being stuck in my head on repeat. But whereas if I can read something, then I feel I can pick and choose how deep I'm going to go into something. And that helps me a lot. But what are some other things people can do?
Well, I mean, I think that's great what you're talking about. One of the things that Spirit says is kind of like we were talking about in the beginning, your journey, like actually realizing this concept, your individual journey, each of you listening, your journey is the most important journey. Your soul evolution, the reason you're here is the most important, not in an egotistical way, but in the fact that your purpose is to live your journey to the fullest. Okay. So that's the umbrella of what I'm talking about. The thing is, one of the biggest things that overrides that knowledge and that access is our nervous system. Fear, fight, flight, chaos, to the point of numbing. And when we look at the human collective right now, which is really, really chaotic, it is sort of being built to create that disharmony, that inability to recognize resonance within, so that we don't push through and evolve fully. So when you say, like, what can you do? What can the average person do? Exactly like you're saying is like recognizing that for you, watching the news is dysregulating to your nervous system, honoring what your body can handle, what your consciousness can handle, and curating that environment while still being aware of what's going on is so important. And recognizing, what does that look like for you, right? Like, how does that align with your passion and purpose? How can you stay grounded in these energies so you're not overwhelmed by what's being thrown at you? That groundedness is where we have space for conscious awakening and evolution. That's where we can expand and learn more. When we're in fear state and chaos state, spirit messages can't get through. Our minds can't expand and come up with new creative ideas. We are bombarded and squashed. So we want to create a balanced nervous system so that we can open and blossom.
And so how do you personally then keep your vibes up? Like, what are some suggestions? You know this to be true, of course, but others have probably experienced it. Doing those things that bring you joy ultimately raises how you feel, raises your vibe, which then automatically
it then automatically shifts you into a different state of recognizing what is your reality, right? And again, your version of reality is what matters most. Now, some people will think, well, that's not reality. Reality is this. And if you're not in that reality, then you're, off your rocker. And that's not the case, actually, from how spirit expresses it. It's, what are you bringing into your reality? Because there are many realities available, right? For example, and this might sound harsh, but some people's reality at this time right now is living in a war zone. And that's awful. But that's not everyone's reality of where they are in a given moment. So if you're not in that fight or flight moment of your reality, what are you doing with your current reality? Are you taking on their reality and living in that fight or flight? Or are you using your capacity to not be in that reality and focus on what you can create here? And at the very base of it, the most important thing we can do is keep our frequency steady. Because what happens is you actually become this like hub frequency for people around you that helps steady their frequency. And then more people steady more frequencies. And the steadier our soul frequency is, the more grounded we are, the less affected we are from the chaos and the narratives, and the less play that has on us, the more we can ascend and grow, right? So in terms of myself, what I do, like I've found what aligns for me. So what puts me in a happy place? Dancing. I love to dance. So I make sure that I'm taking a couple dance classes so I can be in that joy where for that hour, nothing else exists except for the music and the moves and the people in my class, right? I make sure I spend time outside in nature with no phones, no media, no nothing, and just be present. Present with my kids, present with my dog, present with my cats, present. And I try to infuse joy in moments no matter what, because if we allow it, life will be really hard for anyone. There's plenty of things in life available to take us down and keep us bitter and cold and cut off. And I've had experiences where I've been bitter, cold, and cut off. Didn't help me at all.
Right.
Whereas when I focus on joy, that helps me so much more in where I'm going. And it makes my reality of experience better.
Yeah.
And
it's not like you haven't experienced hard times. And you've experienced hard times more than once.
Yeah.
And you've tried experiencing it through the level of this sucks, life sucks. And also experiencing through what can I take right now that's going to make me feel better in this moment.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great that you're talking about that, but just to give for anyone who's not familiar with your work, to have that perspective that, yes, you're talking about things from experiencing it from both sides.
Yeah. It's, my daughter was saying to me the other day, actually, what were we talking about? It was those late night conversations when they're like snuggled in bed with you. I love them.
I love them. And you're like, you need to go to bed, but this is the best conversation I've had with you all week.
Yes. And we were talking about something I don't recall what it was she brought up, but I'd said something about it. I put a spin on it. And she's like, Mom, how do you always put a positive spin on things? Like, where did that come from? And I was like, honestly, it is what helped me get through a lot of really tough things. Because if in that moment of like the crappiest situation, you can think, well, what is the positive here? And if you can find it, it's like you have a rope, you have a safety rope in that moment. You might not know how you're going to get back up over that cliff, but in that moment, you realize you're not free falling. You've got a safety rope. And I was like, the more you do it, the more it becomes second nature. And by the time it becomes second nature, you're so grateful every time it just clicks in, and like, I remember, I'll share one story of when so 2 years ago, I was 2 years ago already? Yeah, 2 years ago, I was really, really sick after surgery. It was not pretty, in and out of the hospital many times. And there was one time we were sitting in the hospital. I felt beyond horrible. I think this was our third hospital visit. There was only one ER doctor on. We were there for almost 24 hours.
Oh,
Yeah, like when you're awful. But in that moment, two things happened. One, they were gracious enough to move me into one of their last beds. Well, it wasn't a bed, but it was a reclining chair, right? Instead of in the lobby. And I thought, how lucky am I that I can have this reclining chair right now? Like, this is beautiful. And I can ask for a warmed blanket. They brought me a warmed blanket. And I was like, that is so much better than when I was sitting out there and I didn't have this. How lucky am I in this moment? Right? And it was able to shift it.
oh, so good. So
And then I had this brief moment with Spirit, and this is more unique to me, but I had this brief moment with Spirit where it was just so bad. I said, please just take me out for a minute, just so that I can know something separate from this sensation. And they took me into space, into the ether. I just was able to go into the ether, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank you for showing me the difference. And then back in my body again into the pain and discomfort. But I had that moment. And so I could reflect back on that gratitude that in this experience right now, I'm suffering, but there is also the experience of not suffering. And so I'm learning something. What am I learning through this experience right now? Right. And so it's been something I've trained over my life through many experiences of shifting my narrative in the toughest, worst moments so that I can have that safety rope.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I think that we naturally have people around us when we think about that who have done that and who've already taught us that. I think of my mom was really good at that. Well, find something nice to say about that teacher.
Yeah.
I want you to come home from school with 2 nice things to say about that teacher that is causing you a world of pain. Or even a teacher or a friend who points that out. So because it's a learned thing, it's a practice thing. And some people may come at that, well, yeah, you've just got rose-colored glasses. But as you've experienced, what's going to get you through that tough moment in a better way?
Yeah. And we can revel in those moments. Like if we really let ourselves, we can revel in those moments. I have another one, which wasn't sickness based, but this is so funny. But I was on this camping trip one time. It was in grade 9. And we were on this school geology trip. And wherever we'd put our tent, me and 2 other girls, we had no idea that it would become a flood path. Had no clue. More specifically, we didn't realize my side of the tent would become the flood path. So at 3 a.m, I wake up because it's literally flooding through, not just seeping through, flooding through my sleeping bag is water where mine was. Yeah. Freezing cold. And I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, what the heck is happening? I'm beyond cold. Get out of my tent, sneak over to where one of my teachers was. And I was like, Mr. So-and-so, I'm like, I am frozen and soaking wet. And he was like, oh my God. Anyways, he's like, you're just going to have to sleep in the van, right? Like we had this big, people hauler van. So I get into the van and I'm thinking, this is the worst ever. I'm like chattering so bad. I don't have anything, like I have a wet sleeping bag. So good luck with that. But I get into the van. I brought my clothes, not knowing what was wet, what wasn't, because it was in the tent with me. I managed to find a dry pair of underwear, a dry shirt, and a dry pair of pants. I didn't have dry socks. I didn't have a sweatshirt, but I had dry underwear, dry shirt, and dry pants. And then I managed to find this sort of like throw blanket in the van. And I remember the amount of joy I felt from those simple articles of clothing. I wrapped myself up and I was like, how lucky am I that I'm not stuck wet? I'm allowed to be dry. And I got so sick after that. I lost my voice. Like I don't think I got pneumonia, but I got bronchitis, like all of this. But it was this vivid moment of like how glorious I found dry clothing, especially dry underwear. Nobody wants wet underwear.
No.
Yeah. And I was like, and at least I can be in a van. I'm in a van and I'm dry. Yeah. So perspectives, right?
I wanted us to share some of your other stories. Are there, because like we discussed, stories are so powerful and there's such a great way to understand things and to connect and open our curiosity and raise our vibration. And are there some stories that really stick out for you over this journey that you've had?
Do you mean like mediumship stories?
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. I have a couple, and the reason why I want to share them is because they really help change our perspective of dying, the moment of dying, which people are essentially, for the most part, I'm going to generalize, but like taught to fear it, taught to fear this horrendous moment. But one of them it's vivid in my mind. This was one of my earlier readings too, and it's never left my mind. So I was reading for this person and they had lost, I can't remember if it was a friend or somebody, but anyways, the spirit that crossed over was a man, it was this male. And I think he was about like mid-30s or something. And he showed me that when he passed, he was hit by a car. And so in our minds, when we think someone's hit by a car, we just think, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And yes, it is from our side. Of course it is. But from his side, his experience was his dog ran across the street and he ran after his dog because he was like, oh my God, the dog's going to get hit by a car. So the dog runs across the street. He runs across the street. He gets to the other side and he turns around and he's like, what? And he sees this car and this person laying on the street. And he's like, how did that happen? And then he realizes the person laying on the street was him. And he said it happened so fast. And the moment of actual impact, he didn't experience. And I've seen this theme so many times where, especially in like accidents that we perceive to be awful, gruesome, and whatnot, the spirit actually leaves the body right before impact. I've seen it times where another spirit I talked to was female. She had a head-on collision with a semi. And she showed me, she slowed it down that like an inch before the front of her car hit the semi, she was pulled out of her body. So she had no experience of the impact. And I think that's something important for people to know, because when we are the ones left behind and someone has had a really horrible exit, we are just destroyed by the thought of what they've suffered. But the spirit world will do everything in its power to protect the exit point, because the exit point is actually such a seamless thing. It's so seamless to cross over, especially in those kind of situations, that most of the time the spirit is out of their body and they're like, what? And they feel as normal as they are, but then they realize they're having to come to terms with what happened. And so, for anyone listening, if you've lost someone in that way, or you do lose someone in that way, just remember that they likely didn't suffer as bad as the story of what you're hearing.
In that case, when someone has lost someone that they really care about, when would you suggest that they connect with a medium? And when would you and how could they know? And I'm sure at the Soul Summit you'll probably cover this, but what are someone's options when someone has passed and they want to connect?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when the first couple of years I was doing readings, I would always say to somebody, give it at least a month after they've passed before you come for a reading. And sometimes I would say give it longer. And there's still truth to that, because sometimes the soul needs some time. Time isn't the same on the other side as it is here. So 1 month or 3 months to them is irrelevant. It's not a thing. But sometimes when souls cross over, they go through a life review, and then they have to come to terms with their experience. And sometimes that's very fast, and sometimes it takes a little while. So sometimes if people come right away after someone's crossed over, that spirit is still busy going through their experience. Maybe they're still really close to family members. Maybe they're not able to communicate very well yet. Sometimes it takes some time. But then I've had other situations, and this one really stood out to me too. Again, I had this woman come see me one time. She emailed me. She's like, I need an emergency reading. I just lost my baby. And it had been like that day. And normally I would be like, no, that's too soon. But there was something, again, a resonance piece in me that was like, no, I need to connect with her. So I said, okay, come see me tomorrow. So she came to see me, and her beautiful little baby came through with so much detail, saying, mom looked like this, dad looked like this. They put me in this onesie. They gave me this stuffy. I got to snuggle with dad for a little bit before I passed, because it turns out the baby had lived like a couple hours. And there was so many validating pieces in that for her. But the crazy thing was that earlier that morning, she almost didn't come. She almost didn't follow through on the reading because she'd gone for a walk. She was distraught, obviously. Ran into somebody random on the street who said, are you okay? What's going on? Told them what happened. Told them she was going to see a medium. And the person on the street basically made her feel very bad and terrified about coming to see a medium. And how dare you do that? If you do that, your child is going to go to a very dark place, you this and this and this, and just laid it out. And she said, I almost didn't come because I don't want to do anything to ruin my baby's experience in the afterlife. But she followed her resonance and came anyway. And the validation that came through was so healing and so significant for her to know that, yes, the soul does go on. Yes, my baby did know me, even though it was just a couple hours. And again, the vividness of that soul being able to come through was so impactful, which is often the case though with babies, right? That baby was only on this side for a couple hours, so their capacity on the other side and knowledge was still very much present, right? So it really depends on the situation. And I think it merits a phone call or an email or whatever it is to whoever your medium is to ask. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll do like a quick tune-in on the individual in question, like the spirit, and just be like, are you available yet or not? And they'll often tell me. So I don't think there's one hard, fast rule.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I know we'll talk about this at the end, but also on your website, you have a number of ways that people can contact different mediums that you have vetted, and ways to ask questions of you. I know you don't do the individual readings, but you do these questions that people can submit.
Yeah, they can submit questions. Yeah, 1 or 2 questions. So
yeah. Any other stories that jump in that you want to share?
Yeah. Okay, let me see. What are some other ones? Okay, here's a really neat one. This happens all the time. This is part of the journey. And anytime that I'm mentoring someone, connecting with someone, and they're along their spiritual journey and they're starting to open up, they always get impatient. And I have completely been there too. It is a part of the spiritual journey to have moments where you're getting nothing, where you're feeling like you must have made it all up, coming back to that idea of being crazy. The whole journey of awakening to whatever it is all about ebbs and flows. And there's a purpose for that. Sometimes we think that like we're so ingrained in our society to progress really fast and learn all the things and read all the things and do all the things. And we're willing, right? We're willing participants to do it all. But what we don't realize is the energetics of the universe is always about ebb and flow, right? Breath of life, breathing in and out. There's an equal response. And so with that, whenever you have a spiritual experience, something really significant, it will often be followed by opportunities to ponder and reflect, meaning times when not much is happening. And people will always want to fight that and always assume that spirit has left them or they did something wrong. But it's a time in which we're given space to integrate. Because if we were to take on all of the knowledge in an instant, it would absolutely overwhelm the system. And Spirit has said that so many times. It would blow our nervous system. It would blow our concept of reality. And we do see that sometimes when people do certain like plant medicines, which I'm not against. But when some people do plant medicines without enough grounding or too many in a row, it blows open their consciousness too much and they can't place it somewhere. They can't place the experience somewhere.
Yeah.
And so we really need to embrace the times when it quiets down as a time for us to reflect, to have everything settle so that we can make space for the new influx, which will eventually come. So I say that if any of you are impatient and you just want to see stuff now, you just want to know stuff now, it will be in your journey to learn to be patient. And if you overdo it, it will set you back. So it's not worth it, right? I had a friend one time who was a really good healer and they didn't see spirit though, but they could feel, they would know, and they were a great healer. And then one day they always said like, you and your visions and stuff. And then one day spirit opened up visions for them and they were seeing orbs and spirits around all day and it freaked them out and they shut it down. They're like, I never want to see. I never, ever want to see because it was just blasted open. And so there's such point to little steps along the way and accumulating your journey versus one massive opening.
Right. This reminds me of a story that we share. So I grew up on this farm, then moved down. My parents were living there. My mom had the beginnings of Alzheimer's, and she would see children around the farm everywhere. And she would end up down at the neighbors because she was looking after the children. And this, this was quite a number of years ago. And then my dad at one point said to me, your mom's not nuts. I saw the little boy. He was in our family room. He walked straight through the door. This is what he looked like. And then an hour later or so, he denies everything. Which is really interesting. But also, so I'm thinking, okay, he could be validating mom's experience. He just wanted her not to be going down this path. So he's then validating this to make her less losing her mind. Or he really did. He really did see this boy. Anyways, so 3 years pass. I'm selling my parents' farm and I say, Ginette, why don't you come out? Just come check out the farm. I think you'd like it. There's such it's such a wonderful energy at this place. And why don't you tell the story from there?
Yeah. So I remember parts of it because I don't always remember all the details of what I
get in for you.
But I remember walking around the farm and I could feel a lot of energy and I was drawn to one of the barns, the barn. There was one barn. Yeah. And I was drawn there and in there I could see this younger boy. And if I recall, he had like the train conductor type material, whatever that's called, like the lined material. He was wearing that and had that kind of a hat. And I could see him around one of the doors, and then I could also see him up like near the top side had like a window or an opening.
Yeah.
And I could see him there, and he had been around for a while. That's what I remember of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And then he was able to give you who he was and story. And the fact that he had passed in the 1920s, but was one of the last cases of cholera.
Oh, wow. I
There's,
don't remember that.
yeah, he was one of
Cholera
the last
piece.
cases of cholera in Canada. And
Right.
he passed, he was around 8 or 10, and he wasn't stuck. He just liked to come out to the farm because it was so much fun. And
Yeah.
he would go in and out. And there had been only one, the property went on title the first time in 1911. And then my parents bought it in the early 70s. And so it had been with that one family for a really long time. And so it was just so neat. But the fact that Ginette described this little boy, 3 years later from
Mhm.
my dad describing it and then completely denying it was just the coolest thing.
Yeah, right. And I love those things when that happens. And one thing that's important to know is a lot of people worry about hauntings being, again, like it's the way stories are shared, that it's such a bad thing. Or the thing in it is, most cases, it's not, because our reality, our dimension of 3D as we see it right now is mingled in with 4D, with 5D, with 6D. It's all happening at the same time, just in different frequency levels. So it's quite common for those things in like 4D or 5D to bleed through into 3D when the vibrations are really high. That's what seeing a spirit is sometimes, right? And so
Yeah.
if we look at it that way, we don't need to be afraid and think this is haunted bad. It's like, no, here's a place that has a sacred energy frequency shift where we can start to see different dimensions coming into this reality. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Right?
And that's exactly what it felt like. And it didn't feel scary. And I grew up there. I'd spent
Yeah.
so much of my life there. And that was something that I thought would have freaked me out, and it didn't. And I think that's a really great thing for people to know, that there are those like, it doesn't all need to be scary.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid wasn't trapped. He was having a ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. So Ginette, it's been wonderful talking to you. I know there's so much more that you have to share, but I'm also very conscious of our time today, and that you've got lots of activities to do. And if people want to learn more about you, I'll put in your website. And also, I think that Avalon Summit, the Soul Summit, it sounds
Mm-hmm.
so much fun, and
Mm-hmm.
people will be able to learn a lot and be able to learn about different modalities and stuff. But is
Mm-hmm.
there anything else that you wanted to share about how people can get in touch with you, and just some final words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Yeah. I mean, getting in touch, anyone can connect with me on the website, spirit.com, as well as my YouTube page is Ginette Biro Medium. I post a lot of videos there weekly, plus my own podcast, Spirit Wisdom Podcast, which is on YouTube as well as all audio platforms. And then Instagram, Facebook, it's all Ginette Biro Medium. So lots of ways to find me. In terms of messages to leave everyone with, I'm actually just going to tune in and ask Spirit
Oh,
what they would want to share.
fantastic.
So
Fantastic.
yeah, just give me 1 second here. I'll see who's available. Okay, so this is coming from one of my guides. And she's saying that for many people, the month of May into June is going to bring a lot of like closure moments, completion moments. Sorry, not closure, completion. And she's saying completion rather than closure, because it's not about ending and closing it away. It's about completing a cycle. There's big cycles being completed right now. And she's saying with that, we really need to step into celebration of self, and also she's calling it the awakened mind, like what is available for you next. what is available for you next. So she's like, over these next couple of weeks, really take time to recognize what is completing in your life and what does that allow you to look into now, because you're starting this brand new, beautiful journey. And she says if we do that with open eyes, it's amazing what we can discover along the way. So it's really like keep eyes wide open, notice what you notice moving forward, because there's a lot available.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeanette's guide.
Amazing.
I love that. I love that differentiation between closure and completion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
It's softer and feels less daunting.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much. And I'll put all your details, and I encourage everyone to listen to Jeanette's content on YouTube and her podcast. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you for joining me on the Miles to Zen podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, follow, share, or leave a comment so we can keep growing this community together. This podcast was created and produced by Shannon Miles Halliday with original music by Anna Vovziniak.